Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Haplet, a Percy Jackson Relearning podcast. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week we read Chapter 12, I Go Snowboarding with a Pig.
You could say he goes snowboarding.
Oh, yeah. I was just...
No.
This entire chapter was just
really
the
a
X
pun.
Games. I mean, I guess, in the spirit of, most 90s movies, we have the primate or animal that's, when I think of this chapter title, B, I always think of, the 90s where there was, this influx of movies with adorable animals doing adventure
Doing
things.
sports things?
Or
Yes,
doing
yeah.
sports things, there's Air Bud. What other
And
ones?
then Most Valuable Primate, remember that one?
I remember that one. I remember the movie Ed. Did you ever watch
Yeah.
that one? It's the one with the guy from Friends. Something Rock.
Vaguely.
It's
There's also Racing Stripes where a zebra becomes a horse race. Remember that one?
I just remember
We've
that one.
talked about that before, right?
I just
I feel
remember
like
that
we have.
movie because Chris Tucker plays the Fly. That just
Yes.
sounds like a Chris Tucker role.
No, wait. We've had the same conversation on the air before, and it was not Chris Tucker.
Was it not? Oh, you're right.
It was not Chris Tucker. It was Chris Rock. Different Chris.
They both sound the same.
Admittedly do a similar kind of voice when they're doing voice acting. It's a fair confusion, but yeah, we've literally had this conversation before. We're just spiraling back to the same conversations. Anyway.
No, my favorite thing though, B, is that Air Buds actually have a complete movie studio, and they have a cinematic universe.
There's at least 15 Air Buddies movies at this point.
Yeah, they go to space. There's one where they have they do pro wrestling.
Mm-hmm. There's Santa Buddies. I know there's at least one or two of those.
Can we get one that's mythology buddies? I know there's the Wishbone episode where they do Apollo. They do a couple of the myths.
Oh yeah, I love Wishbone. That was a good show.
But that's not really what we're talking about today. Today we're going to be talking about Chapter 12 and how we go snowboarding with a radical pig.
Yeah, not quite. When I read this chapter title, I very much imagined Waddles from Gravity Falls with sunglasses on, just really chill, snowboarding, saying stuff like radical. I don't know. That's not what happens. It's not even really a pig.
Yeah, it's
kind
very
of a loose
unbelievable.
definition of the word pig.
Yeah, it's unbelievable a little bit that it isn't a pig. But technically, I guess pigs are descendants from boars, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they're related, I know, but I don't know. It's a tenuous title. And the snowboarding thing, again, not quite. Yeah, Rick Riordan likes to be silly with his chapter titles sometimes to the point where he's not even super accurate.
I always think of Rick Riordan. He's always sitting there on his keyboard, chuckling to himself when he comes up with these chapter titles. And this is, what are the cool things that kids like these days? I'm so in tune with the youth of today. And he's looking at his poster of Tony Hawk, ripping it on a Reed poster for some other reason. And he's like, you know what kids like these days? Snowboarding and the X Games. Rick, you're 10 years too late.
Yeah. I mean, I was one of those kids. Were you one of those 90s kids who was convinced that you were going to be an extreme sports star, but had no reason to think that? Because I definitely was.
B, I was the weird child. I wanted to be a crime scene investigator, and I also wanted to do forensic autopsies.
Okay, well, I did go through a weird phase where I wanted to be a spy, so I understand what you're saying, but yeah, when I was I want to say 9 or something, maybe a little older.
I might have to
I definitely just watched a lot of Rocket Power and thought that I was really cool.
Well, I mean, that's the epitome of cool is Rocket Power, but for me, I have to kind of contribute my mom because I would watch Court TV at the middle of the night while she was sleeping, and it has just messed my brain up for the rest of my...
Yeah.
It has messed my brain up for the rest of my life with just true crime.
And then here you are now. That's your origin story, really.
Yeah, there was no dark
and
alleyway.
My origin story is having a Reggie Rocket skateboard and using it once and then falling. So that's where I'm at.
Then my origin story would be I found a dead body, and I was like, we have to tape this off. We have to set up a perimeter. No one goes in and out, and everyone has to wear gloves.
I think that's a Stephen King story, pretty sure. Anyway, they don't really go snowboarding, but there is sort of a pig. There's a porcine creature in
Yeah.
it, I guess. There's a lot of
Yeah,
weird stuff that happens. The skeleton warriors make another appearance. That's exciting.
we
We
get a
get some
lot of
more.
new questions, like a
Yes,
lot of
that's
weird
true.
questions, and we get a lot of new exposition, which I would consider
Tons
furthers
and
the
tons.
plot a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation happening because I guess they like show up to this town. So yeah, like a little bit of backstory. They arrive on the outskirts of the ski town called Cloudcroft, New Mexico, which sounds like a fake name, which it is because it's fictional.
Is it fictional?
I think so. I don't think it's based off of a real place, is it?
Well, they talk about Alamogordo, which
I guess.
let's
Hmm.
go look this up before we look like idiots. And
Yeah.
then we have the one listener that actually lives there. It's like,
Someone's
"Hey."
from Cloudcroft. I think statistically that can't be true, but you know.
Well, statistically, it's possible.
Yeah. Okay, you Google it.
I don't have my computer near me.
Okay, I can Google it. I guess I have my phone here. Let's see if it's real. It is a real place.
I would imagine it's a real place. I
It's
mean,
a
I was
real
born
place.
in New
I don't know why I
Mexico,
thought it was
but
fake.
I've
It
never
sounds
heard of it.
fake.
Yeah, I was born in New Mexico, but I don't. I didn't know there was a place like that. Like, I know where Alamogordo is. I know where like all
That
those
just, I
places
don't
are,
know.
but
It
not
sounds
there.
very high fantasy, Cloudcroft. It sounds like a Skyrim location or something.
Well, B, to be fair, George R. R. Martin specifically lives in New Mexico because it looks like a fantasy land.
That's true. That makes sense. So yeah, they show up, place called Cloudcroft, and there's kind of nothing they can do because it's cold and there's no like transportation.
Yeah, it's like one of those like one-way street towns, like in every movie. There's like a big heist
Hmm.
or something where the villains or whoever ends up in like a small town and they adjust, kind of like the movie Doc Hollywood, I guess,
Yeah,
with Michael
it's
J. Fox.
it's a
Though,
nothing town basically. That just has some tourism, I guess, because of the ski thing. But then, well,
so you
there's
just
this
get like a
line
bunch
that
of
Percy. Hold
oh,
on,
so
my
the town's
my
only
audiobook
inhabited
crashed.
by people from Australia that come during the off season.
Yeah, hold on. Where's the thing that they find out about it?
But yeah, no, like Cloudcroft is a very like small town, like population 3. The mayor's also the postman. It's like that type of town where it's like you either need a car or like you're Hades out of luck.
Yeah, so there's this description of the town that Percy says, which is inside the store, we found out a few valuable things about Cloudcroft. There wasn't enough snow for skiing. This grocery store sold rubber rats for $1 each, and there's no easy way in or out of town unless you had your own car.
And you have like the old timey shopkeepers, like, well, you could call a cab from Alamogordo. And then they walk outside and there's a guy on a bicycle that says, "You're all doomed. Doomed."
Yeah, they're kind of in a nowhere town. Then there's nowhere to escape, so they just decide to get some coffee and pastries from a coffee shop, I guess, because there's nothing else to do when they're hungry.
It's conveniently, the coffee shop is also owned by the mayor. And he actually is the person that's the barista.
Yep.
We're really setting this up for a population of 3. But I like
Yeah, it
that they
kinda
have like the
feels that
setup
way.
and the payoff of the rubber rat. I think that's such a clever mechanic to have
I knew
in this
something had to
chapter.
happen with the rubber rat because I was like, there's no way that they would add that detail to this story and something doesn't happen. I thought maybe I had a feeling it would come to life in some way because just there's no way that it would just be there as like set
Rereading,
dressing.
so rereading it, I forgot that it came to life. I thought it was supposed to like scare the boar, like it's going to be something so
Okay,
like
got
an
it.
Aesop fable where it's this big gruesome boar, but it's scared by like a little fake rat.
Yeah. That's not the case, but it does come back into play. Chekhov's rubber rat.
Yes, Chekhov would be happy for us, I guess. But yeah, like really not much happens here. It's like a very slow burn in the beginning of this chapter where like not really much happens because all they're doing is sitting and like eating pastries. Grover's literally eating wax paper. Like
That's
a
true.
nice
Yeah,
little
he's
touch.
eating the whole pastry with the paper and everything because he is a goat man.
Yes. So it's unbelievable that, they're like,
Jeez.
"Oh no, what do we do?" Well, we have to get a car. We have to figure out a way out of here. They don't have a convenient like farmer that's going to hop on their tractor. Because there
Yeah, so
isn't
it's during
anybody.
this time that so I think it's Zoe and Grover are getting the pastries and everything. So in the meantime, Bianca and Percy have this conversation, which we get a lot of
Yes.
like weird backstory that still doesn't fully explain the kind of odd circumstances of where Bianca and Nico originally lived, because it's still kind of cagey on the details.
Yeah, and I like that they have this aspect of Bianca and Percy finally talk because throughout this book so far, they haven't had really any interaction other than the beginning of the book. So it's a nice way
Yeah.
to slow down and kind of have this exposition and finally like call Bianca out on her BS because someone has to do it, and that's Percy Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, well, like literally, what, she gets rescued and then she pretty much immediately joins the hunters, like right after that
Yeah,
happens.
she gets like
So we
mild
don't
like
really get to see a lot of conversations that happen with her because she's kind of squirreled away in like this little weird world of Artemis's hunters. And the only thing we ever really hear from her are like bits and pieces that she says to Percy or the stuff that he overhears when he's eavesdropping, which we'll talk about later in this chapter. But
and and even Percy
yeah.
Jackson brings up that was dropping some eaves earlier. I mean, when it comes to Bianca, I think the best way to put it is she was like spirited away almost, and how she just gets indoctrinated and she doesn't have really reason to talk to Percy other than, oh, he's going to take care of Nico. He's going to be his dad. And the more you read about the explanation about Bianca, it still doesn't quite redeem why she did her decision, I felt like her
Yeah, there
explanation
is
is
a
still kind
bit
of bad.
more. We kind of get a little bit more of her perspective as to why she decided to join the Hunters. And she even calls herself selfish, but like, I don't know, the justification is pretty thin to me. It almost makes her sound worse in some ways. She's like, I'm kind of sick of taking care of my brother, which it's like, I kind of get where she's coming from, but is that like really your decision? I don't know. I felt
We'll get
weird
into that
about
angry
it.
we'll get into that
Yeah.
angry rant, but let's kind of like talk about it because I want to read like what she says because I think that
Mm-hmm.
would put into perspective what she's talking about. Because once again, I still think she's very selfish.
I think so too. I agree.
Uh,
I have the passage right here if you
I
want me
have
to
it
read
too.
it.
I have it already up.
Okay.
So I guess to set up the scene, Percy and Bianca like sitting on a porch pretty much, and Percy asks, how do you like um how do you like being a hunter so far?" I asked. She pursed her lips. "You're still not mad at me for joining, are you?" "Nah, as long as you know you're happy." "I'm not sure happy is the right word. With Lady Artemis gone, but being a hunter is definitely cool, I feel calmer somehow, trying to make sense of things, and everything seems to slow down around me. I guess that's immortality." I started I stared at her, trying to see the difference. She did seem more confident than before, more at peace. She didn't have to hide her face under her green cap anymore. She kept her hair tied back, and she looked at me right in the eyes. When she spoke, with a shiver, I realized that 500 or 1,000 years from now, Bianca D'Angelo would look exactly the same as she did today. She might
So
be
creepy.
having a conversation like this with some other halfwood long after I was dead, but Bianca would still look like a 12-year-old.
So creepy.
Like she's finally like I guess getting her like so Bianca's kind of like getting her legs a little bit. Like you notice like she's kind
She's
of like
adjusting. Yeah.
embracing. Yeah, she's like totally like embracing the hunter lifestyle of her hair's back and she's more confident because she can't be killed unless she's in battle and old age isn't going to be a factor.
Yeah, and obviously I think that immortality just kind of changes the aura about her too because she just seems to like have I don't know, like the way she describes that like time interacts with her differently almost like she feels like everything doesn't matter as much because she's immortal. It's like that's even what she said. She's like, "Oh, that must be the immortality, the way that I'm interacting with time now."
Well,
And
if you have immortality and you know that you're not going to die, like I think in like a lot of passages, I'm trying to remember like in Tolkien, there's like passages like 100 years is like a blink of an eye to an elf. Like
yeah,
there's things that are
exactly.
just like when you have to put into place that what immortality is that you don't have to worry about like wasting your life. So you could pretty much do nothing and time will still go on at a constant motion. So Bianca is just like, yeah, I'm kind of happy here. But then she kind of starts to open up to Percy because she realizes that she might be immortal, but her brother Nico is not.
It's interesting that she says that time has slowed down around her, or like she's everything seems to have slowed down around me. I would think that it would seem faster because she is gonna live forever, but I guess it's just like it. Everything seems slower in the sense that like it doesn't matter as much to her because she feels less like attached to the physical world. I'm not exactly sure what she means by that, but Yeah, they kind of go on with their conversation about her justification for joining the hunters, and she said, Nico didn't understand my decision, Bianca murmured. She looked at me like she wanted assurance it was okay. He'll be all right, I said. Camp Half-Blood takes in a lot of young kids. They did that for Annabeth. Bianca nodded. I hope we find her, Annabeth, I mean. She's lucky to have a friend like you. Lot good it did. Sorry, lot of good it did her. Don't blame yourself, Percy. You risked your life to save my brother and me. I mean, that was seriously brave. If I had met you, I wouldn't have felt okay about leaving Nico at the camp. I figured if there were people like you there, Nico would be fine. You're a good guy. The compliment took me by surprise. Even though I knocked you down and captured the flag, she laughed. Okay, except for that, you're a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that line of dialogue kind of shows, she's still human. She isn't like Zoe, who's just like a Terminator sent to hate men.
Right. Well, because she's also, like, been a part of the Hunters for way longer, so her connection to humanity is different, I think. Like, we've talked about this, how, like, the purpose of the Hunters is to kind of, like, not make attachments, obviously particularly like romantic attachments to dudes, but it's in general like they're kind of just like this insular little weird culty group, and because Zoe's been a part of them for so long, she's like has no relation to mortals or even other half-bloods or anything like that. She's just like has this one-track mind of doing her mission and kind of nothing else.
Especially
and I think Bianca's more of a person still.
Especially with, like, I was rereading some of the chapters with Artemis, and that one of the stipulations they had is that anyone can join the Hunters of Artemis, so you can be a demigod, or you can actually just be a person, like a mortal.
You can just be a person.
Yeah, so...
Which was Zoe, right? I think Zoe was just a person. They even say that sometime in one of the earlier chapters. I don't remember exactly what the phrasing was, but it was something about how she wasn't a demigod.
No, she doesn't seem like it, especially with the flashback scene they had last chapter with the dream sequence and how,
right?
Because
she's even though she's human from ancient Greece, right? I think that's the implication.
Not really, because remember her mom was a sea god, so there's maybe some more things.
Right, so she's not a human. She's like something else that isn't a demigod but isn't a human.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Never thought of it that way, but that's a possibility. Yeah,
right.
And then
I forgot about
he starts talking about how the back. Then Bianca starts to give her backstory, which the way I was reading it, I just kept thinking, a series of unfortunate events. It's just.
Oh my god, me too. I was thinking the exact same thing. I was just like, they're Klaus and Violet. Like they're Klaus and Violet. Like, wait, I kind of want to read the description. Let me see.
Look away, look away.
So what's the story with you and Nico? I asked her. Where did you go to school before Westover? She frowned. I think it was a boarding school in D.C. It seems so long ago. You never lived with your parents? I mean, your mortal parent? We were told our parents were dead. There was a bank trust for us, a lot of money, I think. A lawyer would come by once in a while to check on us. Then Nico and I had to leave that school.
So
okay, this is... They're at Prufrock Prep, right? Like, it's the same story.
The banker's coming. He has a terrible cough.
Yeah, lawyer, banker, same different. Like, they're very comparable in story. I guess the difference is they have access to the money instead of, like, the whole weird rigmarole with, like, Violet having to be older or something. But it reminded me a lot of that.
But they have a bank trust, and surprisingly, they aren't being pursued by an evil count. But some guy comes and,
instead, actually, but it's kind of
but
like...
instead something else happens. They actually get whisked away by a man
for something
who says, hey, we're going to go...
It's very vague.
Let me read it. So what then happens is more unique because it feels like they are technically whisked away. There isn't like an evil count after their money and their fortune. But
that we know of.
Oh yeah, that we know of. It's Count Omar in this story. One day a different lawyer came. Oh, so the different lawyer actually is Count Olaf?
Mm-hmm.
One day a different lawyer came to get us. He said it was time for us to leave. He drove us back east through D.C., then into Maine, but we started going to Westover.
Yeah, so that's like their origin story. Again, this is a continuation of like the weird thing with their origins because, what was it, last chapter where she's like talking about the subway and how like the subway station didn't exist before when they were first living there, and they're like, wait a second, their subway system has to be way older than Nico or Bianca because they're like only 12 or whatever, and it's like an
Yeah, I
old
don't.
town. Like it doesn't make any sense. So there's some sort of like weird missing time thing going on that I can't quite account for yet. I mean, you're laughing at me probably because you know what it is, but
All I'm gonna say, B, is in this chapter there is a setup, and eventually there might be a payoff.
I mean, there has to be a payoff. I hope so. Like I know we're finding out more and more about their weird origin. There's a lot of actually weird KG origin stories going on in this book because there's Bianca and Nico and like what the heck is going on with how old they are, how long they've been around, and where they came from, and then also same thing with Zoe. Like, wait, who is she? Like, what is her lineage about? Because then we find out all that stuff in like Percy's dream. There's like more than meets the eye to a lot of these characters.
Well, you have to introduce new characters in a way where it's tasteful because we already know who Percy Jackson is. We already know who Annabeth is. We already know who Grover is. Like, even in the last book, you have to introduce and talk about Tyson. You can't just have a book where you have a new character and they literally contribute nothing, like, backstory wise, other than, I'm ultimate badass, like Zoe Nightshade, and you have no backstory for them. Like, if it isn't explained, they're
Right.
pretty much like a red shirt. Like, they're there to be expendable. Here,
I
we have Bianca's story, where pretty much the essential is her and her brother get whisked away. They spend a couple of days at a hotel or something, and then they go all the way cross country, and pretty much they end up at Westover, and then they meet Percy Jackson. That's
It
pretty
sounds
much
so
their
spooky and
backstory.
confusing. Like it doesn't really make any sense, and she doesn't elaborate. And you're like, wait, okay, so you
Well,
remember being taken because of something important, and then you started a new school, and there's just like a lot of like confusing timeline stuff going on. And of course, once again, Rick Riordan utilizing his favorite literary trope, which is like the important conversation interrupted by something, which is like he basically starts to pry about what the heck is going on with like their family, and then he accidentally reveals that he was eavesdropping between the conversation that Bianca and Zoe were having about the general and something happening with that, and then she gets mad, and then just in time Zoe and Grover show up with like coffee and pastries and everything, and he's like, oh thank god, because I don't want to have an argument with Bianca about the eavesdropping thing.
yeah, we gotten really in depth with that, but pretty much essentially, I kind of getting tired of this trope a little bit.
Yeah, it keeps happening. Like it just it's I feel like Rick Riordan keeps like eking out like just weird backstory stuff just enough to be like, wait, what was that? And then just as like you're about to find something out or find something interesting, then there's like, oh no, a monster's here, or like, oh no, someone swoops in to like start another conversation. There's always like something to interrupt it, and I guess that's to like keep you compelled, but you never find out all of the backstory in one conversation. It just always seems like you're in a constant state of being interrupted by something.
I'm sure it doesn't help that we read this book one chapter at a time because if
Oh
you're a
yeah, for
kid
sure.
and you're just plowing through the book, you
Right,
probably
it
don't
feels
even
like
notice
much
this.
more like torturous to like try to find out what's happening. And obviously you've already read this book, so like yeah, at least you kind of know what's going to happen. I mean, you might not remember everything, but yeah, being like a first time reader and also doing it a chapter at a time, I'm like, "Oh my god. Just tell me the backstory of these characters. I just want to know,
Just
please."
tell me. I want to know what happens. I want to
Yeah.
know that
But
blank
that's
is
not like a
blankety
pacing
blank.
problem on Rick Riordan's part. I think it's just like a me problem because I'm reading this book over the course of like more than a month.
Maybe even like
So
Rick Riordan doesn't even realize that he keeps doing that because that's what his style is doing stuff
yeah,
like
that's like
this.
his style is just really it's his favorite thing to do. Really, it's just, he has like such a very specific pattern in how he writes, and I don't think that's a bad thing. We've talked about this. Like he has certain writing crutches, I guess, that he depends on. Like he has to have like exposition gets interrupted. There's usually like a fight
I
scene that happens out of nowhere to kind of like interrupt the exposition. Then there's like after there's too many fight scenes, then he'll have like a more like slow paced exposition chapter where they're talking for a while, but then a fight scene again. Like it's just like it's this constant battle back and forth
so
between balancing like action and conversation, and like that's like the whole book pretty much.
yeah, I'm like going through this book again. I'm actually developing kind of like I would consider how Rick Riordan probably writes is he uses an outline, so he probably hits
Mm-hmm.
all the points because the guy was once a mystery writer, and a lot of mystery writers, what they do is they form outlines so they can put the mystery together. So
Right.
obviously, it's going to be the exact same thing of his workflow and how pretty much this is the formula that I've realized. Percy Jackson is clueless, something weird happens, and then he realizes very quickly that it's something mundane, but also it's a Greek god or a Greek legend or something.
Yeah. I mean,
And while that's happening, there's
oh, sorry.
while that's happening, there's observations like the rubber rat, or there's things like the blueberry muffin, or we're going to talk about
Like
Green
an important
Day.
observation that ends up being
Yeah.
significant later, which is that's another thing that he loves to do. I think that also makes sense with the urban fantasy thing that he's trying to do is he loves to like mention a detail casually that seems like it's just like adding set dressing or color to like what he's describing, but actually it's like important mythologically to what's about to happen.
Well, you need to add stuff like that because you either have two trains of thoughts here. Like if you want to have urban fantasy, there's like two trains of thoughts here when it comes to urban fantasy. You either need to do you need to have like so many pop culture references or things like make it like urban fantasy, or two, you make it urban fantasy but like in a way where it's almost like timeless, where it doesn't really matter, or you make it a period piece. Like it was the 1930s, you see, and
oh yeah, which is kind of like the Crimes of Grindelwald or whatever, right? Like or whatever. All the Fantastic Beasts movies are like that kind of thing, urban fantasy.
Yet I'm still confused how I still can't get my head around it. But the whole plumbing thing in Hogwarts and how they didn't have
Listen,
modern plumbing.
I don't want to think about it.
Though it makes a plot hole in the story, but there's things that are just stupid, and we won't talk about it because I think we've talked about it at length.
We've talked about it way too much.
I've talked about it on it's
yes, but
like
it's a similar idea.
J.K. Rowling's like, I'm going to just be clever and talk about this, and it's just like, you're adding more holes to the boat,
Put away the keyboard, JK. Just put it away. We don't need to know.
Just take it out back and shoot it like Old Yeller. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to let go. So what ends up happening is they're all hanging out. They're having blueberry muffins. Grover has a bran muffin because I hate bran muffins. So I was like,
bran muffins kind of taste like sand. It's fine.
Well, it tastes like sandpaper to me.
But not good.
The most important thing that happens is that I like to call it like fresh breeze, or like all those commercials where you have like an air freshener and like
it's like
lilac,
a Pine Sol commercial.
Yeah, like a pine softener. Or it's like one of those like. The best way to put it is it's like one of those air fresh commercials where like they shoot something and you just see like breeze and flowers shoot out of the can, and like weird things happen, like the snow melts and green grass starts growing, and all of a sudden Grover's cup turns into birds, and Grover just starts going crazy. It's almost like he had like a seizure, like he like just drops.
Oh yeah,
he
has like an episode basically. He just like falls on the ground and starts like. I mean, does he
starts like murmuring to himself. Like he starts like mumbling to himself, and like Bianca and Zoe have to like hold him up because he doesn't have.
So you remembered the whole Pan thing, right, from this chapter? Like I didn't find it at all surprising that was like the sort of stinger ending to this. Is that it's like Pan is here? He like it's nature magic. Like I didn't find that at all surprising.
But I didn't find that at all surprising. I knew.
I mean, like you obviously read this before, but I feel like. It's so obvious, right?
If you're gonna, it's obvious. It's very obvious, but you have to keep in the mindset of like a 7 to like 10-year-old who might read this and like they might not think it's obvious. I feel like I would
know though.
But it's also one of those weird things with Grover. We'll talk about Grover really quickly. Is that so far his mission? Like he's there as the friend character, but he also has his own. I like to call like side story.
That's what I'm saying though. That's his like main. Goal as a satyr is to find Pan again because he's been missing for years. So,
but B, here's the problem: he's always going on quests with Percy Jackson. So how is he doing
He's always
his mission?
Distracted.
He's always distracted, and I mean, okay. The second book is him failing and figuring out the reason why all the Seekers have been failing. So now that's out of the way.
He gets captured, so he's completely fridged in the second book. Like, there's nothing he can do about the whole Pan search thing because he's basically the damsel in distress in that book.
Well, literally, he's wearing a wedding dress.
Yeah, literally, he is wearing a wedding dress. You're right. Yeah, he literally is damsel in distress in that one. And then, yeah, he's like, Peach in Bowser's Castle. Like, that's pretty much what's happening in that book. So it makes sense that he's distracted.
So here's the problem when it comes to like talking about characters with like their side stories is Rick Riordan does a good job of like putting up like everyone has like a primary story and then they have like a secondary story. In the first book, Percy's trying to save his mom. His secondary story is pretty much the rest of the book is the lightning thief.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he wants to do. Grover's the same way.
There's always
His primary objective in the book is pretty much Grover wants to find Pan, but for some reason that's like the side story rather than him just going along with the quest and helping out. He be like going for Pan?
Is helping Percy as a friend. So he prioritizes that, even though his like mission as a satyr is to find Pan. You just said something that made something very obvious click in my brain, which is that every Percy Jackson book so far, like every quest he goes on, like has like a secondary thing of him trying to save someone he loves. Like it also has to have that for some reason. Like the first book is his mom, second book is Grover, and now it's Annabeth. Like, God, just like hide your loved ones. They keep having bad things happen to them. And it's not even necessarily a main part of the story that he has to save them. It's like a secondary thing. Like first, he has to go to the underworld. Well, I guess he has to, get the lightning back and then also save his mom. And then in the second book, it's like he has to get the golden fleece and also save his friend. And then in this case, he has to save Artemis and also his friend. But it's always a friend or loved one who's missing somehow.
Well, yeah, you have to have that in a book where, in Percy Jackson, it's very apparent in Percy Jackson, but a lot of books don't just have one story. They have an A story, B story, and sometimes a C story. That's why I kind of like with Grover, like, I actually feel like the Pan thing was actually, like, very shoehorned in a little bit because you need to have it because, like, oh, yeah, we forget Pan's out in the wild.
He has another purpose.
Yeah, he has another purpose. Like, you totally forget about that. I totally forgot about Pan. Like, you forget about it until it's brought up, and you're just like, oh, yeah, there's this other aspect of
your
Grover.
Life purpose, yes. Forgot about that.
But then we have, now we have the Deus Ex Machina of the boar, and we have
the boar is
Pan.
helpful.
Yeah, the boar is helpful because I guess Grover willed it into existence because Pan's like, I like you, man. Here, have a boar.
It's kind of interesting because at first you, get this sense that something magical is going to happen. I thought Pan was just going to appear because of all this nature magic stuff that's happening around them. But then the skeleton warriors just appear out of nowhere, and I'm like, wait a second, what? And they're dressed as cops this time, and I'm like, oh god, skeleton cops, my worst nightmare. And then they get fought off by the boar, but the boar is kind of not really that much help because he's also trying to kill them too.
Well, you can't tame wild beasts.
Right, it's oh, of course he is, he's wild. That's the line that Grover says. Here, let me try to find it.
I mean, you can't tame nature, B. Didn't you learn anything from Jurassic Park?
By the way, yesterday at the grocery store, I saw a man with a white beard and white beard and mustache, and a Jurassic Park T-shirt. I'm not saying that he's John Hammond.
John Hammond's alive.
But that was John Hammond. I saw him at the grocery store. He's alive, and he's getting eggs and milk. He was there. He
comes up to you. He walks up to you. Hello there, small child. Do you want to go to my dinosaur park?
Dinosaur DNA. Anyway, so
just because
there's that.
Can
it's
doesn't mean
the whole
you
life
should.
Finds a way thing. I understand what you're trying to say. It's a specific thing that Grover says that's very funny because he's kind of so into the nature magic of it all that he finds it kind of beautiful how untamable the boar is, but it's just kind of horrifying.
I just imagine. So this is me. Grover sees someone getting disemboweled by the boar, and he's like, "Wow, isn't nature wonderful?"
Tali says it wants to kill us, and of course Grover said it's wild. So how is that a blessing? Bianca asked. It seemed a fair question to me, but the pig was offended and charged her. It's okay, I guess we're done with the skeleton warriors, but now we have a giant pig to grapple with. Not much better.
Yeah, but we'll kind of backtrack a little bit because there's a lot of the things that happen before the boar attack. And primarily the scariest, spookiest set piece in this is that the skeletons come back and they're all wearing police outfits. For some reason, I feel like they're also wearing novelty mustaches.
Yeah. They're all they're trying to chips or something.
Yeah, they're chips. Or I guess the best way to put it is in Reno 911, they all have those handlebar mustaches.
No, exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I was picturing as well.
Yeah, they all have those push broom mustaches.
Yeah.
But the most disturbing thing about this is I always hate this, like in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, like in that movie, where one of the versions, I can't remember because there's like 80,000 of those. I think the most famous one, I think in the 70s or the 50s one, where like the aliens were impersonating people, and they would, like, when they spotted someone that wasn't an alien, they would point and then go,
Oh my
ah,
god.
and like just
It's horrible.
scream. It's like horrible. But here it's except they weren't. Except here, the Skeleton Warriors pulls out a cell phone, a big old cell phone from 2009, and except and
yeah,
this
it pulls
was,
out their Nokia.
yeah, and
Their
here he's
bomb
like,
pilot.
except here he wasn't speaking. He was clattering, clicking sounds like dry teeth on
gross.
bone.
So
Suddenly, I
creepy.
understood what was going on. The skeleton had split up to look for us. The skeletons were now calling their brethren. Soon we'd have a full party at our hands.
I hate
Except
it.
I think
Thanks, I hate
the
it.
funny thing about the cell phone, I think the funny thing about the cell phones is that they're the ones that are the walkie-talkie kind.
Oh, for sure, like push to talk.
You have the push-to-talk ones. But yeah, there's something scary about when you have a creature that is undead or something where it doesn't communicate like humans do. Like it does like weird things like clicks its teeth.
Uncanny. So creepy. I hate the Skeleton Warriors. They're, first of all, my least favorite things are skeletons and cops. So right there.
Now, why don't
That's
you
a
like
bad
the skeleton?
combination.
I'm curious. Why don't you like the Skeleton Warriors? Like, what is the primary fear of this?
They're uncanny, I think. They just like they're less, I don't know. I find like the monsters not that scary in Percy Jackson personally. Like I didn't find the Minotaur that scary. I didn't find the Chimera that scary. Like I don't know, like monsters that just look like monsters like aren't that freaky to me. But there's something about like these creatures that are like sort of human and they have like these spooky like undead eyes. It's yeah, and also that they're like kind of persistence hunters that are like always in the like perpetual state of stalking them. It's I don't know, they really unnerve me a lot. I don't like them.
I'm sure that probably that makes a lot of sense, seeing how there's always the uncanny valley aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, they're skeletons. Wait a second, I'm a skeleton on the
Everyone
I'm
has
a
a skeleton inside them right now. Oh no.
I'm a skeleton on the inside. Oh no, what's gonna happen? I know there's actually
Yeah.
a Ray Bradbury story called The Skeleton, where it's about a guy who realizes he has a skeleton in his body, and he's just like, oh
Of
God,
course.
it's gonna come out.
Freaking
not gonna
Ray
spoil it.
Bradbury. He wrote every kind of creepy story.
Well, yeah, because there's actually a funny story why he wrote that book, or there's actually a funny story why he wrote that story. He went to the doctors and he's like, I'm having this weird feeling in my hand, and the doctor like looked at him smugly and he's like, that's your skeleton.
Oh my god.
So then I had this
Yikes.
great idea for a skeleton book. But when I'm thinking of like these skeletons, I'm thinking of them almost like Ray Harryhausen, like imposed on
Like
the screen,
goofy.
like matted. Not
Well, like
not
stop motion, I
goofy.
guess.
I feel like they're like stop motion skeletons almost. Like they
Mhm.
have like a weird jerkiness to them. That's why skeletons in stop motion work. That's what.
That's kind of what you imagine a
One second,
skeleton to move like. Yeah, I
one
hear your dog.
Like, for me, like when I think of like a skeleton movie, when I think of a skeleton moving, I always think of like jerkiness and things like that. But here, like they're swift hunters, and that's really scary. Especially like they're not affected by the elements. They will
Right,
come
yeah.
at you
They're just
until
not affected at
you're
all.
dead.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that creeps me out is like it's sort of similar to like the if you ever watch a zombie movie where the zombies are fast, that's like very upsetting because you want like undead creatures to at the very least kind of be like lumbering around, but something about like sort of like this, precision hunter that's also undead is like super creepy.
See those zombies don't scare me. The zombies that scare me are the ones from Return of the Living Dead, where you dismember them, but then all their limbs are also like can move
Also moving.
independently.
Yeah.
So you can't really
Also
kill
creepy.
them. Like you can't really shoot them in the head. Like
Well, that's
the
sort of
cool-
like these ones though, because then even when they break apart into pieces, they like reassemble themselves like the Iron Giant at the end of Iron Giant.
Hogar.
They just like kind of like will their bodies back together, and that's freaking creepy.
Well, that was what makes them like indestructible warriors. And that's like the funny thing about that is that you have a creature that is indestructible in this way, other than like, I guess what if you like smashed it to bits and made it into dust. I guess
Well, I
the
mean, they
dust.
burn one and then it doesn't come back to life. And then I think if you like eviscerate one enough as to where they can't put all their pieces back together, then that's another way of killing them. But if you just kind of like break them apart with their sword, like what Percy does, then they just kind of reassemble.
Great. I'm just imagining like Percy Jackson turns one into dust, and the dust like goes into a person, then they become a skeleton,
Oh,
and like
so
the
creepy.
skeleton like bursts out of that person. Oh man,
I
that's
want to
scary.
stop talking about skeletons, Zach.
Oh, you're
I'm
talking.
never gonna stop thinking about skeletons now tonight.
Well, to be fair, skeletons are. To be fair, B, we're just meat suits and skeleton armor.
Yes, well, let's never think about that.
You're talking to a
Honestly,
person that
though,
loves
I think
horror.
the boar is pretty creepy too, in a different way, because it's like wild and untamed, and there's like no way to stop it from just like smashing into things. It has like a mind of its own. And then just in
Especially-
general, I think large pigs are upsetting. I don't know why. Maybe because of Red Dragon. That might be part of why I find them upsetting. Just like pigs are kind of creepy creatures.
I like piglets and I like bacon.
Well, piglets are cute, but then I don't know. There's like this one post where someone like posted a picture of their pet pig, and someone else was just like, "You do realize that that pig, given the chance, will eat your face in your sleep," and I like can't not think about it now. So there's that too. I don't know. Pigs are kind of an upsetting creature too, especially like a wild boar that's like has these giant tusks and it's just like thrashing through things. Like it's truly enormous. Like they all could fit on the back of this boar.
That's a unique thing when it comes to wild beasts, especially boars, is that the scariness factor is that they are also unstoppable eating creatures. Though when it comes to like wild animals, not necessarily pigs, like any animal that's hungry enough will eat anything. Even dogs, if they're hungry enough, they will literally eat a person to the bone.
Yep.
But we're not going to talk about that.
Let's,
the most important
let's
thing
never
about
talk
this-
about that again.
As much as I'm friends with the animals, I would gladly hug a boar as long as it doesn't impale me on its tusks.
No, I'm good. I'd pass. Thanks. I'm good. If I saw a boar, I'd be like, and I'm gonna leave it to its own business.
Oh, and if I saw a boar and I was hungry, I'd be like, good bacon.
Yeah,
And then
fast bacon, difficult bacon.
the forbidden bacon.
That's exactly what boar is. Pointy bacon.
It's the forbidden bacon.
Stabby
but
ham.
The one cool thing though I like about this chapter as well is so they start fighting the spooky skeletons. And of course, they're failing, except Bianca does something weird and she actually kills
Oh
one.
yeah, the flame knife thing, which is out of nowhere.
Let me read it. Let me read it. So what ends up happening is one lunged at Bianca. I thought she was a goner, but she whipped out her hunting knife and stabbed the warrior in the chest. The whole skeleton erupted into flames, leaving a little pile of ashes and a police badge.
Yeah, and then he's kind of like, wait, what? How did you do that?
Yeah,
And
that's
she's
kind
like,
of
"Oh."
weird. That's kind of weird, don't you think?
Yeah, what would that power be?
It might have to do with something, because remember, B, she is a demigod.
She's a demigod. Who's her godly parent? Who controls flames? Is it Hades? Oh my god, then he didn't follow the pact. Then they're all jerks and they all broke their promise.
I don't know if it's Hades or not, but I mean, there's also Hephaestus, who is god of fire and fortunes.
Oh, okay. I don't know enough about Greek mythology to like know.
You're thinking of like when you think of fire, you're thinking of like Hades from Hercules, where he
Yes,
has a
I am
blue head
thinking of Hades
fire.
from Hercules. I know. That's my fault being a 90s kid. That's all I'm thinking of.
But luckily, it's helpful.
So yeah, the Deus Ex boar appears. It's literally from a god. Actually, a god literally sends a boar, and is like, "Hey, it's gonna help you, but it's gonna not be fun." Basically.
So if you don't get horribly mangled and dismembered by the boar, it's gonna be a good ticket out of here. And the boar is just like,
But it's gonna suck the entire time. Yeah.
The sound that it makes is the sound like my favorite YouTube video of all time is the Szechuan sauce Rick and Morty video where the guy jumps up on the counter.
Oh god. Is that really your favorite YouTube video of all
No,
time?
it's not.
Because I feel like I just want to bleach my brain from knowing about it existing.
It's hard to watch. My favorite. It's like it's one of those where you get like the bad chills. Like there's a it's it's a type of video where you get a D chills where you feel sorry for the person behind the counter.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. It's.
For people that don't know,
Anyway.
there's like the Rick and Morty Szechuan sauce. Like there's this video where this guy jumps up on the counter. He's like, "I want
So
my
cringe.
Szechuan sauce," and like he starts like screaming. He's going, "Ree, ree." That's what I'm thinking about. Like that's
Maybe
the
he
sound
was
the
the
boar
boar
makes.
all along.
Yeah, it was the boar all along in
Anyway,
human form.
yeah,
I
the
mean,
boar is kind of creepy, but it does end up being helpful. It's very cute the way they trap it, kind of. Like, I want to read the description of, like, how they trap it. The boar was less fortunate. It couldn't turn that fast, so all 10 tons of the monster charged out onto the tiny trestle, which buckled under its weight. The boar free fell into the gorge with a mighty squeal and landed in a snowdrift. With a huge poof, Talia and I skidded to a stop. We were both breathing hard. I was cut up and bleeding. Talia had pine needles in her hair. That's funny because she used to be a tree. Anyway, side note. Next to us, the wild boar was squealing and struggling. All I could see was the bristly tip of its back. It was wedged completely in the snow like styrofoam packing. It didn't seem to be hurt, but it wasn't going anywhere either. I thought that was a very like visceral description of what happened. I could just like see it like wedged in the snow, like kind of just wiggling and screaming, like I'm trapped, like kind of
Or
angry, but like I can't do anything about it.
it's either that or the visual humor would be it actually flips over and you just see its nublets of a
Yeah,
leg.
its little nubbly feet like
yeah.
moving up and down. Yeah.
Speaking of Thalia, the most important part of this chapter is that Percy Jackson and good old Thalia Grace end up being trapped by the boar because of their good luck, and they end up having to jump off a cliff to safety.
Oh yeah,
and
they
Thalia does not want to do
The
it.
board is because they like, well, that's what the snowboarding is in the chapter. Surprise, surprise, it's not a snowboard. It's they're like on the shield and then they snowboard down the hill, and then because the board weighs too much for like the bridge, then it collapses, and that's how it gets wedged into the gorge like styrofoam.
And I want to read this interaction because out of every interaction so far in this book, this seems like the most realistic. This seems like the most realistic, and I have to give props to Rick Riordan for setting this up because this is the greatest idea of a flaw that I think could be put into this book. And it explains so much about Thalia's character. I looked at Thalia. You're afraid of heights. Now that we were safely down the mountain, her eyes had their usual angry look. Don't be stupid. That explains why you freaked out on Apollo's bus. Why didn't you want to talk about it? She took a deep breath. Then she brushed the pine needles out of her hair. If you tell anyone, I swear. No, I said. That's cool. It's just the daughter of Zeus, the Lord of the Sky, afraid of heights.
She was about to knock me into the snow when above us, Grover's voice called, "Hello, down there." I shouted, or down here, I shouted. I thought that was really funny that he's just like teasing her in very much the way that you would imagine like a 13-year-old to tease someone.
That's why I think it's like one of the most realistic pieces of dialogue because Percy Jackson is teasing her. He's not being like a jerk about it. He just things are just like clicking into place. Like, oh my god, you're afraid of heights. That's actually kind of funny.
Yeah, that'd be like if he was afraid of swimming or something.
I mean, that might happen for all we know.
Yeah.
But here's the problem. This is how my brain works when it comes to situations like this. They're in the mountains, right, B?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's around them this entire time?
Snow?
Yeah, snow. Snow is a good answer. Now, this is just my city learning, but what is snow usually made out of?
Water?
Oh, yeah,
'Cause
water.
Percy can. Oh,
Huh.
you think Percy can control the snow? You mean like Frozone?
You would think you'd be able to, like, summon snow because it's technically water, right?
I don't know. Actually, I don't exactly know how Percy's powers work. There isn't really enough like very specific nitty gritty of like the mechanics.
Maybe I'm applying, like, waterbender logic to it, but I would imagine any body of water that Percy's in contact with because we've seen him do things like use fountains. We've seen him use, like, small
Right.
bits of water.
Maybe it has to be liquid water.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of liquid water
That's true.
in the mountains.
I don't know. I don't know why he doesn't seem to use his water powers in this scenario. I think he just kind of like forgot for a second. I don't know. He uses his sword a lot in situations where I'm like, you could use your water powers. You do literally have magical powers, but you know, whatever. I'm not complaining.
Then again, I guess Thalia can't, like, shoot lightning again, which is a weird thing because, she could do that too and, like, stop the boar's heart.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my, fancy city
boar's
learning.
Yeah, I don't exactly know the extent of how powers work, and I think sometimes even Percy forgets that he can control water. I don't know. Yeah, that is kind of funny that it didn't even occur to him.
again, that kind of like brings up the question of powers are only helpful when Rickardon decides they're helpful.
Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way where it's like powers only come into play when there's like all hope is lost and he's like backed into a corner and then out of nowhere like a gush of water like pushes the antagonist out of the way or something like that. There's always, last ditch effort. The powers tend to come into play, but it's like not usually the first thing that Percy thinks to use for some reason.
Yes,
He's
and
more
if
likely
they
to
work
use the
together,
sword.
eventually they'll be able to make Captain Planet. Once they let their
Exactly.
powers combine.
Is Grover Hart?
Yes, he is.
I think he is.
Yes, but he is because remember he could talk to animals.
It's
Monty
true.
could talk
He
to
really
animals.
is Hart.
What's
Which
Zoe?
we find out more about his powers in this because, so the reason that the boar came, surprise to no one, is that Pan is here somewhere. I don't know. He's not exactly here. He's sort of sent the boar. He's nearby, I guess. They don't really explain it.
Yeah. Pan knows what's cooking in the kitchen type of feel. Like he knew something was going to happen. And he's like, I would have sent my boar piggy friend to help you. Go on, Waddles. It's just demonic Waddles.
Yeah, it's...
Oh my god, B! The boar is Edgelord Waddles.
Oh, absolutely. That is what the boar is. But, yeah, I don't think that was like that shocking of a revelation, especially considering all the other weird stuff we learned this chapter about, like, wait, when did Bianca and Nico start going to that school? Like, there's a lot of, like, weird backstory stuff. We find out the stuff about Talia being afraid of heights, and then it's just like, oh, Pan is here. Like, yeah, we know it's nature magic, like a cup turned into a bird. Like, of course he's here.
It's almost like, duh.
Yeah, I didn't think that was, like, that compelling of an ending to the chapter. That's, like, maybe my one...
But I'd have to play like devil's
complaint.
advocate. I feel like to a kid that's reading this for the first time, it might be
Really?
a surprise. It might be a surprise. I didn't say it's
I don't know.
always
I
going
feel
to
like
be a
I give more
surprise. I said
credit
it
to
might
most
be.
young readers.
I feel like to young readers, it might be a surprise. But also, again, it's one of those chapter stingers where this is the first time they brought up Pan in like a dozen chapters.
I
and
guess so, but
it's
we've been reading it even slower, and I remembered it. I feel like if a kid was like binge reading and like, reading this in 1 day or 2 days or whatever, they would definitely remember the stuff about Pan and Grover, and especially because Grover is obviously specifically distressed somehow and like going through some sort of thing. And like all the nature magic stuff seems really evident with like different animals. I mean, like the rubber rat turns into a real rat and comes alive and scurries away. Like, I don't know. It seems obvious to me. Maybe it's hard to like take yourself out of your own perspective and say, oh, like what would a average 12-year-old notice? I don't know. Maybe write in, you guys are listening, if you're like, did you guess this when you were first reading the book? I think it's kind of obvious.
I don't think it's obvious because here's the reason. The reason I think of like in Series of Unfortunate Events in the first book, if you kept forgetting that Violet is left-handed, and then at the end of the book you realize that she writes the document in her right hand,
Right.
it's like, oh, I didn't really know that until it has to be explained to you a little bit.
But I feel like a lot of kids that age did notice that when they were reading the first book.
I
It's kind of
didn't
over the
notice
top.
it.
You didn't? I mean, I know a
No.
lot of kids didn't, but I know a lot of kids did, too. Like, it's kind of 50-50,
I'm not-
I guess.
That's what I'm trying to say. Everything should be at least 50-50. Like, I would assume
Yeah.
to some kids they didn't know about this because
That's true. It depends on the way that
okay.
you pay attention.
here's the thing about like how it might not be Pan. There are other gods that could do things similar to
Yeah.
this.
I
Like-
think the Grover thing was the dead giveaway for me, personally.
Do you remember what the symbol of Ares is? At
No.
Camp Half-Blood? It's a boar.
Right, that's true. I don't know. I think also it was the whole thing with, it was with Grover specifically, like having a reaction to it, and like his whole purpose is to find Pan, so that seemed kind of obvious to me. I didn't think there would be any kind of other nature magic involved god who would, I don't know, like that just didn't make sense to me. But it's again, it's hard for me to say for sure like how a younger person would interpret this.
But
I was like so dead set, like knew that it was Pan, that when the boar showed up, I was confused that the boar showed up because I thought Pan would just like walk out of the woods and help them.
oh,
Like
looking
that's
like a dirty,
what I thought.
looking like a dirty hippie. He's just
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like, hey guys, exploring the wild.
Well, I keep picturing like the Pan from Pan's Labyrinth, but yeah, you get the idea.
Okay, you're expecting that. I'm expecting like weird like hobo looking man with like a big old bushy beard, almost like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a combination thereof.
Oh, great. There's going to be a part where Pan drinks the nip of a weird alien creature and then looks sad.
Ew. Gross. Anyway, that's just how the chapter ends. It's kind of like a weird ending. I didn't find like that specific line all that surprising. Other than that, I liked a lot of the rest of the chapter. There's a lot of interesting stuff we learn. The specific thing about Pan isn't like not that compelling to me, but I am excited to like maybe meet him hopefully soon or like pursue what's happening with that, because like so far it's just been like this back burner thing with Grover that we haven't really discussed that much.
Yeah. A lot of questions once again are proposed. We have a lot more answers, I would suppose. Of we now know that Thalia is afraid of heights. We have some questions about like the backstory between Bianca and Nico. And, like,
Yeah,
what's
I
going
have so
on
many
there.
questions about that. I'm still confused.
All I'll say about it, B, is that in this chapter they have a setup, and maybe there might be a payoff.
I think there's going to be a payoff. There's no way that they would mention all this stuff without there being a payoff. Like, it's just, they keep getting interrupted because that's how Rick writes.
The interesting thing about Percy Jackson, though, is that with these books is that they aren't just self-contained. Like, the whole world, like, there's the things from the past might come rearing their ugly heads back. Who knows? And that's all I'm going to say about that. For me, when it comes to the Sting, and for me, it's okay. Like, I knew it was Pan, even probably as a kid, I probably knew it was Pan.
It is still interesting, though. Like, I'm excited to see what happens with that. I just, like, didn't find it as much of, like, a plot twist as I think it's, like, set up to be.
Well, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a plot twist. I think it's supposed to be that everyone now knows it was Pan that sent the boar. That's pretty much the stinger is. You might assume it, but you need to have it explicitly, like, talked about for it to be, like, what's the word? It's like the Schroeder's cat type of thing. You could assume it, but the cat might be alive, it might be dead, but either way you have to at least say something to prove that it exists. And that is my philosophy for today. That's philosophy for you. Let me get the emails and stuff. So B, do we get any messages this week?
Yes, we got an email. Oh, this is from, I have to reread this one?
Yeah, we have to redo that one.
Okay, got it.
I had to cut it out.
We got an email and also a fun bit of fan art from...
Ooh, I love fan art!
From Michael, who says, "Hey, Zack and B, I love your podcast. You guys are super funny, and I have to contain my laughter when listening to your podcast. I made some art of you. I drew B first, and I'm really happy with it, but it took me a while, and I ended up drawing Zack at 2 a.m. I'm sorry that it took you so long. B took me 30 minutes. So the drawing of him isn't as good, but the drawing of B. I think both are great. Anyways, you guys are great, but I have a question. If either of you read The Hunger Games, then I have to ask, Team PETA or Team Gale? I prefer Gale, but I want to know what you guys think. Anyways, it's getting late, so I have to go to bed. You guys are always great and keep up the good work." I'm sorry you stayed up late drawing us, but thank you. It's very nice.
And also the adorable fan art that you gave us is just,
it's very
I'm going to
cute.
explode. Like, I guess the best way to put it is, what is it, like, we're adorable marshmallow people? Like, we look like the Pillsbury Doughboys cousins.
Like kawaii creatures. We have shiny little eyes. I have a bow tie.
For some reason, I have, like, Morpheus glasses from The Matrix.
I think that it's just your shiny anime eyes shining through your glasses, your normal glasses. I think that that's what's supposed to be happening. Either way, very cute.
Oh, so my kawaii desu glasses? What is it, like, you know, in anime, it's like the person has glasses does that weird thing where, like, they touch their glasses?
Yeah, it's very adorable. Me. We have our little Camp Half-Blood shirts on. I'm giving a peace sign.
For some reason, I have, like, when I first thought I had blue hair, but it's an adorable blue beanie.
Yeah,
and
it's a little beanie. It's a very, very cute picture. Thank you so much.
When I first thought, I was like, wow, you actually gave me hair. Like, for me, like, oh, man, that's a compliment.
Yeah, because you don't really have much.
No.
Oh, yeah, and then the question about Hunger Games. We both read The Hunger Games.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm Team PETA. Yep, I like him.
So...
He's gentle and he makes cakes.
It's been a hot minute. PETA's the one played by Josh Hutcherson, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Gale's like the big hunky one, right?
Yeah, Gale's the beefy man, and PETA's the gentle cake boy.
Yeah, because it's funny because PETA is like bread, so he's adorable bread boy.
He's adorable bread boy. Yes, he's the Pillsbury
Oh,
bread
that's
boy.
hard. I'd have to say PETA because it just sounds. I have to say PETA because it's just fun to say PETA. PETA.
Yeah, I don't know. He's just sweeter, and I don't know.
It's also Josh Hutcherson, and also my favorite part of the Hunger Games is when PETA's like bleeding to death, and he like puts the cake.
He just like
icing
covers
on
himself in cake decoration. He just like ices himself into a little corner and is like, "I am just a tree," and you're like, "Okay, I guess that would work." I am a boulder. Do not look at me.
Best scene in a movie ever. I'm dying, but I look fab.
Yeah, ridiculous. Anyway, Team PETA. No judgment if you're Team Gale. That's just my personal opinion.
So we have another email, and it says, "Hey Zack and B, I have returned. I will soon be dropping your fan art for you, but I needed to know from both of you which is your favorite YA pet. Example,
YA
Hedwig.
pet.
No
Oh.
reason behind. It just was a very interesting thing.
Wow.
I also want to let you know that the fan art is going to be my official biggest project ever.
Oh wow.
Lots
biggest
of
project
love
ever.
from me and my girlfriend.
I wonder
Keep
what the
staying
fan art's
mortal,
gonna be. If
Z
it's
and
gonna be
B.
like a horsing around joke, or if it's gonna be us or something. I guess we'll
If
see.
it's horsing around, I'll explode. If it's anything else, I'll also explode. So B, here's the $1 million question: what is your favorite fictional creature?
Oh geez. Favorite YA pet. Oh, this is a tough one. I don't know. I feel like hold on, give me a second. I'm trying to think.
Like,
Does the Incredibly Deadly Viper count? That one's
yeah,
good.
that's a pet. That's a pet. Yeah.
That's a good one.
So I can read you that real quick. Oh, what did you say? The Incredibly Deadly Viper?
I mean, that's like one of them. I'm sure that there's others too. For some reason, I'm having like a brain fart as far as like other pet examples in YA. I'm trying to think like.
I don't think it has to necessarily be a pet. It could just be a creature.
There's an animal. Yeah, there's a lot of great animals in Harry Potter, but also I'm like not even that into Harry Potter, so I feel like I don't know if they would be like my favorite necessarily. I mean, I get immediately attached to almost any animal in any story, so I'm like kind of like a bad person to ask. But yeah, Incredibly Deadly Viper, just like that yeah, with Sunny especially and how they become friends. It's like very sweet. It's cute. Um yeah, that's kind of all I could think of for some reason. I guess like Winn-Dixie from Because of Winn-Dixie, that's like also another one. Just anything with a dog because yeah, that's of course I'm gonna become attached to the dog.
Ooh, for me,
I know I'm gonna think of others as soon as we stop recording, but those are my answers for now.
ooh, that's hard for me. I think I have two, but for me, I had to like kind of like flub the rules a little bit because would you consider them young adult books? The Dracus from The Name of the Wind, which is
Uh-huh.
the
That's
scientific.
sort of YA though, right?
No,
I haven't read
it's
it.
not.
It's not? It's just
No.
fantasy.
It's like there's like weird ways of labeling it, but there's a lot of things in The Name of the Wind that you would not consider YA
Yeah.
approved. That's the reason. But the Dracus, which I would have to say the Dracus because the Dracus is pretty much like the scientific equivalent of what a dragon would be like in this world because Patrick Rothfuss is like, I'm not putting effing dragons in my book, but I'll compromise. And they're adorable.
Okay. We both picked lizards, or I guess reptiles. We picked reptiles.
Or maybe a direwolf because they're just gigantic puppies. And I like puppies from Game of Thrones.
Is Old Yeller YA?
Oh, yeah, that's most definitely.
I mean, like, I like Old Yeller. He dies very tragically, though, so that's, like, not the best. But that's more the story's fault. It's not his fault.
Also, Where the Red Fern Grows is another YA book.
Oh,
with old
man,
Anne,
all of these pets just die, though. It's kind of tragic.
with old Dan and little Anne.
Yeah, these are
Maybe
all
the
sad
Mockingbird from To
examples.
Kill a Mockingbird. That's one that doesn't die, right?
There is a dog in To Kill a Mockingbird, and it also dies. It gets shot. So, yeah, literally, there's no happy animals in YA.
Well, not in
I
old
know
books.
that's a lie. I'm sure that there's happy animals in YA, but there's
Oh,
like I guess there's the
Redwall!
horse in Percy Jackson.
Oh, there's Redwall.
Redwall,
Oh, yeah, they're
they're just
happy
animals though. They're like the characters. They're not really pets.
Well, don't those pets like enslave other people?
This is getting to be too complicated.
Oh, this is a
I stick with my
complicated
answer of the
question.
incredibly deadly viper. I'm trying not to
I
complicate things too much.
I stick to my answer with the Dracus.
Okay.
Do we get any more messages, B?
Yes, we got another email that says, Hi, I'm Belle, and I'm in 5th grade. I'm obsessed with your podcast. It was my very first podcast, and now I'm obsessed. Thank you. I love your podcast because it makes me laugh. I'll be listening to your podcast while walking into school, and I'll start cracking up, and my friend will be like, why are you laughing? And I'll say, it's my hilarious Percy Jackson podcast. And they'll be like, oh, cool, what's a podcast? And I'll be like, it's the most amazing thing in the world. And then I'll tell them about yours, and they'll be like, cool. So, yeah. Anyway, I have 2 questions. One is about Percy Jackson, and the other I'm just curious about. One, if you were a half-blood, would you rather go on quest, or would you want to just stay at camp? And 2, have you seen Hamilton? Because I think I might have heard you quote it in one of your earlier episodes. Yes, I'm one of those nerds who know every lyric from the musicals from musicals like Hamilton. Thank you again for bringing more joy to my Mondays. P.S. Sorry about such a long email. P.P.S. Sorry about the bad grammar and stuff like that. P.P.S. P.P.P.S. Sorry I rambled sometimes. I'll do that. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. Adorable. What a sweet message.
B, all I have to say is, look around, how lucky we are to be alive right
So
now.
you're a Hamilton fan. I know basically nothing about Hamilton other than it's like a historical musical about Hamilton, but other than that, yeah, I know that there's a duel involved. Aaron Burr is there. I don't know. Lin-Manuel Miranda made it. I don't know anything about it. I probably could maybe recognize one song from it, so I'm kind of the wrong person to ask.
See, this is why if we ever are in the car again and I put on Hamilton, I can do the whole show for you.
Yeah, so we're different when it comes to that. I'm normally not that into musicals, which is going to be interesting when we both go and see the Percy Jackson musical and, talk about it, because
it's funny. It's not that I don't like musicals. It's just I appreciate the craft that goes into musicals.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think I just they're normally not my thing. There's a couple ones that I like, but yeah, I'm not into.
But
I almost said Hannibal. It's Hamilton. Those are very distinct things. I hope that it's not Hannibal the musical.
Well, there was a Silence of the Lamb musical that I saw, but it was so bad.
It was bad.
And
Yeah,
so
you
insulting.
told me about that.
Oh man. Though I saw the Huey Lewis and the News one in San Diego, and it was a musical.
Oh yeah, and then the first question was, would you rather stay at camp or go on a quest? Percy Jackson. I would stay at camp. Yeah,
I'd go on a
totally.
quest.
Yeah, we're different people that way. I would absolutely stay at camp. I would hang out.
I guess the real
I would
answer.
go swimming. I would hang out with all the animals.
I guess the real answer, if I was gonna say, if we stayed at camp together, we'd end up just making a radio show and talking about Percy Jackson. Oh,
That's true, and then this is just be incredibly meta. But yeah, I would just stay at camp. You guys, I wouldn't even want to be a demigod. We've talked about this. Why do you think we end our show with Keep Staying Mortal? Like, I don't want to be a demigod. Doesn't sound fun. It sounds incredibly stressful. There are monsters everywhere. I'm already stressed as it is, and I am not a demigod. So yeah, that does not sound fun to me.
Oh, I love it. I love going on adventures and stuff like that. But thank you so much for that wonderfully amazing email. That was super duper adorable and amazing. So we got a new iTunes review from Sweden that says Huffleclaw for life. Hi, I'm 11. Hi, I'm 11-year-old. Hi, I'm an 11-year-old daughter of Athena from Canada/Sweden. I just blasted through most of Rick Riordan's books in about 6 months and was looking for a PGO podcast and found yours. My favorite characters are Magnus, Annabeth Chase, and Alex Ferrero. I don't really know how to finish this. Can't wait for your next episode. Oh no. They say goodbye in Sweden. I'm gonna have to send this to you.
They want us to pronounce it.
Hi.
Here we go. Here we go again with Zack and B, butcher your language.
It's a multi-part epic. It's the last part. So, Hedja.
Hedja?
Hedja? Okay.
Hedja.
So I apologize to everyone from Swedenland. It's either going to be
Swedish.
Hedja or Herpader.
That's borderline offensive.
No, it's not.
I said borderline.
Hedja. heard. I can't say it, so we're just gonna say. B, I don't know how to say this, so we're just gonna say
look it up.
bye. So I think that kind of wraps up our show. We don't have anything else to talk about. Where can they find you, B?
You can find me on Twitter at bkellygorman, as well as Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
And if you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Suda41, that's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. And if you want to follow any of our other plays, just type in Radio Camp Half-Blood and we'll pop up. We also have a Patreon page, so go to Patreon/Radio Camp Half-Blood and you can donate to our show. We'll be having a review up of Ready Player One and several other things such as early access with different tier things. We're going to be having more book reviews up. We have several requests that are in the pipeline, but we just have to find time.
Right, because we have new Patreon people, which is very exciting.
Yes, we do. For $10, you're going to get a special pin made by good old pin. B over here.
It'll be adorable. Handmade by my little tiny hands.
Yes.
Oh, and we probably...
And we also have...
I'm going to say we might not be able to do international shipping on that. I'm not sure yet. It might be, like, exorbitantly expensive for me to do international.
Oh,
but
no,
definitely...
what are you talking about, B? What we're going to do is we're going to get a bunch of ravens that go to different countries.
And summon them. Yeah. So if you are international, we might be able to do it, but I'd have to find out at the post office. But definitely U.S. and Canada, I could ship it.
Yes. Well, we also have T-shirts available at TeePublic. Hopefully we're going to get some more soon. We're waiting for some more submissions before we do that process. But that is super rad, and it's exciting. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another wonderful episode of Radio Camp Half-Blood. Any advice, B, you want to give to the kiddies back home?
Don't go riding any random boar that you find. I think that's probably good advice.
Well, mine is kind of similar to that in that just don't fight a boar because that's the forbidden bacon that will turn you into bacon. Well, yep. I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And keep staying mortal. Bye.
Bye, guys.